I want everybody to have access to care, whatever that looks like. And I think so many times dental office get in their way and they either overthink the process or, their confirmation systems are wonky or they're keeping spreadsheets or lists or sticky notes. We have to have some way to systematize that so the patient feels like they're not pushed, but supported.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tau, and as always, I thank my sponsors, Dental Intelligence, CallRail, and Net32 for their continued support, allowing me to come to your inbox every single Friday at 5 a.m. Eastern Time with a new episode. I also want to remind everybody about my event, Supercharge Your Dental Practice. It's September 25th through 27th in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at Pier 66 on September 25th through 27th. A lot of sixes there at Pier 66 in Fort Lauderdale. You can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com to learn more about the event, see the speakers, learn all about the great events that we're going to have there, as well as our entertainment, which is an 80s band that is going to rock the night, the Friday night of the event. I look forward to seeing everybody there. You can use the code RAVING, RAVING, to save $100 on the already reduced registration. Today's episode is called The Growth Formula No One is Talking About in Dentistry, and my guest is Lorie Streeter from Max Assist. Lorie is a dental industry leader with more than 30 years of experience in practice management, growth strategy, and team development. A former vice president of the American Association of Dental Office Management, otherwise known as ADOM, and now vice president of U.S. expansion at Max Assist, she is passionate about elevating the role of the office manager as the strategic engine behind patient experience and sustainable growth. Lorie is known for helping practices strengthen leadership, design remarkable patient experiences, and build predictable growth systems that create not just satisfied patients, but raving fans, which I'm all about. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Lorie Streeter. Lorie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Len, for having me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And again, I mentioned just now, about the patient experience is so important to everything that goes on in the practice. The experience that the patient has is kind of the initial way that you create trust and get them to buy treatment. So I'm all about patient experience. So I'm excited to talk to you about some of the things we wanted to talk about here. But I think the first thing that I want to talk about is Max Assist is, I don't want to say an unknown software in the U.S. It's more well known in Canada. So can you talk a little bit about what Max Assist is and kind of how you help dental practices?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first heard of Max Assist, some people know it formerly as Recall Max. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. I think it's interesting that Canada knew first. So Max Assist was built of a dental consultancy and then turned into an app. It's a wonderful productivity tool, helps fill chairs, helps ease friction at the front desk. And when I was looking for my next role where I was going to land, right, I had been friends with the CEO for a very long time, and we started chatting. And I got friends of mine on to take demos to see if I was on the right track, because I hadn't been in a dental practice working actively for 20 years. So invited some of my closest friends, and when they looked at it, they were like, oh my gosh, why doesn't everybody know about Max Assist? So I would say one of the, in my mind, a top productivity tool, more than kind of a set it and forget it product. Like there's a lot out there that just want automation. We're all about connection. And we're all about teaching our teams the best way to do things. So Max Assist really does provide an assistant to the front team.
So if you had to pick a couple of things, because there are so many different players in the space. You got Dental Intelligence, you got Practice by Numbers, you got Addit, you've got the revenue, well, the list goes on and on and on. And this has always been an interesting sector in dental industry for me, because, people always ask, I'm using this product, should I switch to this? And it's always like, well, what key features are you looking for? So can you just really briefly, if you had to list like the top three things that you think you do differently or Max Assist does differently than your typical communication software, can you just touch base on a couple of those things so the listeners and the viewers on YouTube can kind of just quickly see the differences that we may be talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing is our AI assistant. So basically our AI assistant goes in, reads the PM system, and anybody can sit down in front of the software and understand how to go about the best way to get butts in chairs, get the right patients in chairs, and fill those holes immediately. That's the biggest thing. We are experts at that. And I think that comes from that dental consultancy background. The other thing I love about Max that no one else does is we actually have individual sign-ons for every single member of the team. And by doing that, you're able to track progress, not really checking on people, but more checking in. You know, it's very hard to scale a dental practice and grow if you don't know what your people are doing. So it really helps office managers and dentists understand what's happening inside the software. And I know you said two, but I think for us, our basically our analytics are very focused on recall, recare, which is super important.
And that makes sense. And again, thank you for describing that. So again, people have an idea of where the product is. Because again, it's just in U.S., Max Assist is still, let's say, not one of the top number of users in terms of user bases for the product. So I'm trying to give them a feel for what you can do differently than some of the other products that are out there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some other things that you wanted to talk about here. So, you know, one of the things you said is growth is an inside job. What do practices misunderstand about where growth actually comes from?
I think the biggest one, and I owned a marketing company for 10 years of my dental career, and I can speak to this firsthand. I think the unfortunate thing is a lot of times we think we need new patients, and we're not going after the patients we've already earned. You know, we've earned a lot of business that just kind of sits hidden in the PM system. And I think that's one of the things I learned right away by going to work for a SaaS company is that the metaphor that our CEO used with me was, you know, the old iceberg metaphor where you see everything that's on the top, but what you don't see is hidden. And a lot of times, you know, we're looking at patients and we're basically saying, you know, you diagnose treatment and then the treatment then disappears if the person doesn't jump on it right away in that treatment plan. And so I really like that, you know, you can't always just keep filling the funnel. You have to literally look within your own practice and go after the patients you've already earned. You know, and the other thing too is if your team isn't really aligned and accountable, and, you know, we're going to talk, I'm sure, a lot about the patient experience, you know, you're not going to have the best marketing. You want somebody to come into your practice and go, oh my gosh, this is the best run business I've ever seen. So I'm all about systems, making sure everybody's aligned, and then really looking at your own internal, you know, patients that you've earned, and that rather than marketing right out the gate, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, most practices they're concerned with how many new patients they have. I mean, it's one of the things that I think most practices can say, hey, I know the number, I know how many new patients we get. Yep. But like you said, there's so many procedures that are not being done that are not even being followed up on properly. And there's so much money in unscheduled treatment that practice is basically ignored. There's no practice, I think, has a great follow-up system out there. It's one of the biggest things that I don't think has been solved yet is somebody comes in, you propose them treatment, they say they're going to think about it, and sometimes it gets forget about. And, you know, and there's people say, well, we follow up one day afterwards, 1 week after, 1 month, or 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. That's really all there is. And when I ask practices, they don't know. There's no real good follow up there. So I think that's definitely a big issue. And it's a lot easier to get them to do treatment than bring in more new patients to do more treatment. So I agree with you 100% there that is a miss in the dental industry as a whole, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
trust me, I'm not expecting a commercial, but we do have something called Chart AI. It actually goes into the PM system and extracts all the information back 24 months. And what's really interesting about that is, and we kind of call it the pie in the face moment, a lot of practices will say, oh, we're fine. You know, we reappoint everybody. Nobody leaves here without an appointment. The average, Len, that we find when we do a Chart AI is $750,000 per provider of missed opportunity. And that's a crazy number. And I wish I could say it's just random, but it's consistent year over year over year that we do them. So it can be scary to think that you've, like I said, earned all that business, but you're not going after it or don't know how to. I
agree with you 100%. So now, you know, one of the things you mentioned is that the marketing isn't the primary driver of growth. Reactivating or not, or just getting patients to do treatment really is. So I'm curious, what is your feeling about that? So do you agree with what I said there? And how do you think dentists should think about their investment of time and energy in this particular aspect of it, which already told you there's a lack of systems in place in most practices when it comes to this types of stuff?
Yeah, I think the challenge here is, the driver in marketing is really the consistency in the patient journey. And I think, if you look at the from the time they come in to the time they get handed off to the back to the time they go to the dentist, it's all a very unique, sensitive process that if done correctly. I saw a quote, I was trying to think of how it read, but it was basically like, dentist office should stop looking, and I know there's a clinical piece, so I don't, that's not lost on me, but we should start looking at dental practices as like a customer service centric patient experience company, right? The patient experience is everything, because I want somebody coming in and leaving, telling their friends, telling their coworkers, because then we don't have to do marketing at all. And I'm sorry for the marketing companies out there, but there's still going to be room to use a marketing company. And when people have too many patients, that's a whole different problem, right? But I'm talking about the practices that you mentioned, Len, when we need this many patients a month to be able to grow. Well, if you just take care of the patient journey, you're not going to need that many. And then when you do get them, all the better, right? Cherry on top of the sundae instead of the whole scoop. So I think part of it is that, and then I think marketing works well to get people in the door, but then systems and leadership are really what keep them there. And that's what I'm the most passionate about. Like I said, I owned a marketing company. I understand what it takes. I also did marketing for a little company called Smile Brands, and I worked for them for 5 years. So my job was to drive new patients into dental practices. I know how important that is, but darn it, if we're going to earn those patients, let's keep them. And treat them the best that we possibly can so that we can experience the lifetime value of a new patient, not just a revolving door.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I'm sure I basically introduced Google reviews, or the importance of Google reviews, to the dental industry already back in 2013. So literally 13 years ago. And reviews were important then. Patient experience was even more important, and that's where I excelled. I am now teaching more about patient experience than ever before, but I've been basically talking about the same thing for years, but the focus has not been on that aspect of it, okay? The focus on, in my opinion, you give a experience that they will talk about. They will be glad to talk about the reviews, but they'll also refer their friends, family, colleagues, and guess what? They'll also pay a premium for the services. So That's kind of how it's funny how 13 years later, things are still the way they were, but even more important when they were 13 years ago, they're even more important now. And it's the same thing. We're all talking, we're just basically blending it up and presenting it in a different way now.
Sure.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
So,
no. And I've been in dentistry, I'm probably longer than you. I don't know. We're probably pretty close. But I can tell you we're just saying the same thing, wrapping it in a different package, but it all comes back to the patient and the patient experience. That's why I get really nervous when we talk too much about AI, marketing, and taking people out of the equation. We believe that connection equals growth. And I think that patient connection and knowing that they can, number one, trust us when they come through the door, but that has to happen all the way through the practice. So it can't just be for the dentist, for them to say, oh, I like my dentist. That's great, but they have to trust everybody along the way, or the equation and the system is broken. So yeah, it's a long journey all the way through, but I think that marketing a lot of times is more internal than it is external. And if we do a really good job with our patients, our marketing engine should be right there.
So I know that you obviously previously worked with ADOM, so you are a firm believer in the role an office manager plays in the practice, even
Absolutely.
more so than most people do. You are a true believer in that, because that's the organization you represented all these years.
Yes.
So the office manager, and I didn't have one. I was my own office manager because I had a very small team. I had a front desk, a person who ran the front desk, dental assistants, but I was the office manager because I did a lot of those roles because it was a very small office. But when someone does have an office manager, I don't know if they really utilize them to their biggest or greatest extent that they could be used. And I think that is a problem only when you have someone who's very talented that you are not using to their full potential. So in your case, being that you were involved in ADOM for all these years, you empowered the dentist to give their office manager more power in the practice to make some decisions, to decide what to use and what not to use. So you want the office manager to do these things to grow the practice. So they are part of this growth engine that we were talking about here.
Yes.
So when this growth engine is fully optimized and you pick the right product, you have the right person running it, what does the role of the office manager look like when it's fully optimized in the practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the interesting thing is that, number one, I did this series when I first started working for Max Assist called Let Them Dental Edition. So you've heard Mel Robbins and the Let Them theory.
Yep.
I think that's a great thing for any dentist that might be listening to really wrap their arms around. I know that some dentists get really worried about embezzlement and problems and all those things, but let's say you have a rock star. And I was fortunate enough to work with, 10,000 plus rock stars over the years, right? Working at ADOM. And they all had one thing in common. They treated the business as if it was their own. And I think that's so important. That doesn't take away from the dentist. That shows such strength and ownership. And then the office manager can then be placed kind of more like a COO. And they're really looking at all the operational expenses. They're looking at KPIs. They're looking at things that you might see in your head, Len. Well, that's what I did. I looked at all those things. I ran my business. But think of how wonderful it would have been if you would have had, I'm just going to say, a Lorie Streeter up front working for you. And you could focus on what you're really good at, which is the clinician side of taking care of your patients and optimizing your skill level and all the things. I think that one thing that scares dentists the most when they get out of business, I said get out of business school. What a whoops. They get out of dental school, right? And I know there's more of a focus on this now, but can you imagine having that person at your right arm that was like, you practice dentistry, I got this. I'm going to treat the business like it's my own, and we're going to work together to grow this thing. And I think that can be subliminal, and I think that relationship has to escalate, and there has to be trust. So for me, when the role is optimized, the business side of the practice runs so much smoother, because someone is accountable for that area. So it's kind of like, how you have, I'm seeing in my head like a racehorse, and there's the jockey, right? They come, but there's always that jockey's assistant that does all the things leading up to. So a really good team is somebody being accountable, and for the dentist to say, I let them be really good up front. I let the hygienist be really, as long as everybody is meeting the protocols and integrity level that the dentist wants to uphold, we're golden. And I think those are the most successful practices that I see.
I agree with you 100% there. I know one of the things we've brought up in multiple times during the 15 or so minutes we've been talking is patient experience. And I love a term that you use, experience economy. And there are so many ways to look at this, but it's really where what you're saying is patient experience is the driving force for business into your practice. Mm-hmm. So when you work with a practice, or when people are listening to this, what things can the practice do Monday morning, whenever, because this is a Friday podcast, so let's say they're listening to it on Friday, and they don't work on Saturday and Sunday. What's the first thing a practice can do to start implementing some things from a patient experience perspective on Monday? Because you know what? This stuff is customer service, and that's what it is. It's things that should be very easy to change in the practice. So I'm curious, what are some practical things that you think practices can start doing to really improve the patient experience?
Yeah, it's really funny. When I worked at Smile Brands, I used to work with my offices, and I was like, oh, this patient's a code 20. And someone sat me down one time, Len, and said, do you know that everybody should be treated like a code 20? And code 20 for me meant they worked at this big company and they had access to all these other people that they might refer, right? So that's what the code 20 was. But I think the patient experience is the differentiator in that experience economy, because this is going to sound redundant, but it's so important and so practical. It starts on the phone. It starts when they walk through the door. It goes to the handoff. then the handoff to the hygienist, it goes to the dentist, it goes all the way through. Because like I said earlier, you want your patient leaving going, wow, that practice knows exactly what they're doing. I've never been treated that way before. That's what I want that's what I want people saying on those Google reviews, right? I want them going on saying, that is the best front office team I have ever experienced. I was treated like everything I said mattered, and more than anything, they listened to me. I mean, I think that's where we build the economic structure of the patient experience.
One of the things you just said was listening. It is such a lost art. When I go into a restaurant, someone taking an order, I can say they didn't listen to what I said. It's such a lost art in every space, but in customer service especially, listening is the key skill that you need. Because if you do not listen, you miss every opportunity, and the patient's going to know you did not listen to them, and you lose all their trust right there. I mean, it's such a basic skill that so many people lack, unfortunately. And I think that's an inherent problem in the industry, is that we're just not very good listeners. All we do want to do is talk and talk and talk and talk and talk some more. We're not really good listeners. So you mentioned patients like being treated really well. Okay. Mm-hmm. You want to treat them well. You want to roll out the red carpet. You also mentioned this company, you called them Code 20 because they had an organization that they work for that had so many possible referrals. You know what we call that nowadays? Social media. Every person who you speak with has a voice, and that voice now, with how much social media reaches, that could be a great determining factor for you to get a ton of new patients coming in. And in the bad case, you don't provide them a great experience. They're going to sound off, and stuff will go viral if the wrong thing is said. So sure. I think that's the way you have to treat that. That's why every patient should be treated the same way, no matter who they work for, what type of insurance they have. You never know who's connected with who, and can help change the way your practice is simply by either talking bad about you or talking good about you online, and something very detrimental could happen to you, and it's all over the internet because of that. So I think that's something that people overlook all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would 100% agree. And I think more than anything, we're trying to create those raving fans, right? We want people singing our praises, because let's face it, someone might have a family big enough to impact your practice with 10 to 15 new patients just by one good experience.
Again, I think we're in the same aspect there. So when you're talking about this Code 20 again, you mentioned this person that has a huge group they work for. I think that's what you would call an employer group marketing to some extent, and everybody overlooks that. So can you talk about what practices can do? Again, forget about the social media aspect of it, which I just talked about. But somebody works for a company that has really good insurance. And I'll give you an example. In Philadelphia, when I practiced in Philadelphia, the teachers had horrible insurance. So the teachers union, the one thing they had had $2,000, which was 100% payment towards aligners, orthodontists.
Sure.
And so anybody who was a teacher that wanted to have aligners done, I was like, tell your friends and family to come in, because they cover up to $2,000 of treatment. It's basically not all that much money out of pocket after you think about it. So how would you, if you had that type of situation, how would you take advantage of that for this group marketing effort?
Well, I think a couple different things, and this used to be my expertise, so I could probably talk 6 podcasts on this because I loved it. So one of the things when I was working at Smile Brands that I learned was employer group marketing. And a lot of offices do designate now a particular person to do their marketing internally. Some do social, some work on reviews, all those types of things. If it were me and I was in a dental practice today, I would have someone looking and really making a cognizant effort to, let's say, I'm going to give you an example just like you gave me. Let's say somebody comes in, they work at Costco, and we happen to take their insurance, and it's a really good paying insurance. I am going to make every effort possible to make sure that any patient that comes in that has that same insurance and works in the same place, because inevitably that happens, right? Someone hears about somebody, and then we have I have 2 people that work at that tire company. Next thing you know, I'm sending something to the tire company. I'm dropping off donuts. I'm doing something. I'm thanking them. Oh my gosh, HR person, we're so happy. Our dentist office has seen like 6 of your employees, and we just wanted to say thank you. It's such a small thing, but it's kind of no different than how a general practice treats their referring doctors. It's the same concept. So for me, I would not be throwing my, net out all over the place or marketing in general. I would have a specific offer. If somebody comes in from an employer group, oh my gosh, we've seen like 6 people from the tire company now. Here, take this. If somebody asks you, here's something for this, whatever your offer is, make sure you're ready to give it to those people that work for a company where they're raving fans and they're referring people. But there's a catch, Len. If you tick off one person that works there, just like social media, everybody's going to know. So that's when your, exceptional experience and that experience economy comes in. We have to make sure that's in effect so that we are sure when someone walks out the door, we did the very best that we possibly could.
Yeah, that makes 100% understanding of what you're saying there. Again, one of the most overlooked statistics, we know about our new patients, but we don't know about our back door. And there's so many practices that are actually contracting. They're losing more patients than they're gaining, and their patient retention sucks. So patient retention is super important, and it's overlooked as well because practices literally are contracting rather than growing. Yep. So what can a practice do to help with patient retention as well? That's where I was going with that next question.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So a couple things, most practices, they diagnose and disappear. We already talked about the follow-up, right? That's super important. We have to have the follow-up conversations in order to give every best effort to get the patient back. I think the practice will grow when the diagnose and the follow-up kind of are congruent. So let me tell you what I mean about that. Clear financial conversations. Confusion screws things up, right? When patients are confused or they don't feel like they understand treatment, they're pretty much going to roll out the door and go, yeah, I'll think about that. I think simple habits like making sure we're listening, like we talked about, proactive scheduling, making sure that, our systems equal beautiful results. And I think that all goes back to how we're treating the patient. So I think follow-up, being consistent, listening, and really trying to find solutions for what our patients are telling us is their barrier to care. Because if you boil this all down for me, Len, I'm people are like, well, you've been in dentistry for 30 something years. Why? Number one, I want everybody to have access to care, whatever that looks like. And I think so many times dental office get in their way and they either overthink the process or their confirmation systems are wonky or they're keeping spreadsheets or lists or sticky notes. We have to have some way to systematize that so the patient feels like they're not pushed but supported.
Got it. So we're running out of time, but I want to ask you one last question before we get to our lightning round.
Sure.
So for practice owners, office manager, they're listening to this right now, but they feel stuck. What is one thing they can do first thing in the morning when they get into their practice to either change how they are or evaluate how they can improve what they're doing in their practice?
Yeah, I think as a dentist, I'd be asking myself, is my process and my systems, are they designed or are they accidental? What does that look like? And then looking at, one of the things I've learned over the years with having my own teams is that people can be very busy. But is it productive? Are we all on the same page? Is the goal clear? And are we always doing something to get to that goal? Because like I said earlier, connection for us equals growth. So anytime we're all connected, we're letting people, be as good as they can be at their jobs and the outcome is clear, we're listening to our patients, great. That's that code 20 golden experience. So I think if we just look and listen, and if you feel stuck, really sit back and take a look and say, is everybody busy or are they productive? There's a huge difference there.
It makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing your expertise. So I'll get your contact information in just a few minutes. So we're going to switch over to my lightning round Q&A, Lorie. So these are business-related questions, but just remember to answer them fairly quickly.
Yep.
And we'll just jump through 8 to 10 of these as soon as we can. So when you were a kid, what was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a talk show host like Donnie and Marie.
Okay. Do you have a system in place personally to keep yourself organized? And if you do, what is it?
Absolutely. Sticky notes. No, I'm just kidding. I actually am really good at putting things in my calendar because it reminds me to stay on top of it in a timely manner.
With my calendar, if it's not on my calendar, I miss the call half the time.
Right.
So because I live by my calendar. So
yes, same.
If you could take a class to learn anything you want, what would it be on?
If I could take a class to learn anything I want, I went to 5 years coaching school. I think I would take a couple more with John Maxwell and his group.
Okay. Do you have a favorite business podcast?
Yes, this one. The Raving podcast. No, actually, I like Mel Robbins. I listen to her a lot, and I know it's not a business podcast, but what I get at it from a human nature perspective, golden.
Got it. Okay. Let's see what else do we got here. What book have you read multiple times? Or another way of asking it, what is your favorite book?
Let Them.
Okay. Let's see what else. What deserves all of your attention but seldom gets it because you're too busy doing other things?
Listening. We already talked about that because I'm quite type A. So I think listening needs my attention. And a little message out there for those of you that have young kids. I helped scale a very large dental association, 17 years of my career. And when my son was down on the floor coloring, I should have been right down there with him and not on calls like this. He's 26 now and he doesn't hate me for it, so all good. But if I had to do over again, and for anybody listening, take the time with your family. It's really important.
I know that personally myself. So I wish I missed a lot of things when my son was growing up. He's 18 now. He's in college.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100% there. Who has been your greatest inspiration?
Wow. Aside from my higher power, I would say Heather Colicchio, the former president of ADOM. And then also, I'm a huge fan of Steve Bilt of Smile Brands. I love watching leaders create other leaders, and being a servant leader myself, or at least I try. Those are the two that I think I would say big fan of.
Got it. No, those are really good answers too. How do you define success?
I define success that when you are actively engaging in business, personnel, life, all the things, if you have a good peace within yourself and you've left someone else in a better place than you found them, I think that's success. And we do that every day in dentistry.
Got it. 2 more questions. Describe Mondays for you in one word.
Chaotic, but productive. Oh, you said one word. Darn it. Productive.
Okay. All right. Last question I ask this of everyone. What is one subscription, which is something you pay for monthly or annually, could be either business or personal. Okay. Mm-hmm. What is one subscription you cannot live without?
Canva Pro. Got
it. So Lorie, let's get some contact information so people can find more about, if they want to learn more about Max Assist, what should they do? And I think you want to offer them a demo link or something. So why don't you share your information so people can find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to contact me directly, it's lorie.streeter@maxassist.com. And you can go to maxassist.com, book a demo with Lorie, and find me there too. I'd be happy to sit on with you and look at it. And I think just, if nothing else, thank you so much for listening to me. And it's been a pleasure. It's been a long time since I've seen you in person, so this was close.
I appreciate it, Lorie. It was good to have you on here. And if you think what Lorie said resonated with you, or you think someone could benefit of it, please reach out. She gave you your contact information to learn more about what Max Assist can do for your practice. If you want to come to my event, Supercharge Your Dental Practice, go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and use the code Raving to save $100 on your registration. Go check out the sponsors, Dental Intelligence, CallRail, and Net32. And again, thank them for their support of this podcast. And as I end every single one of my episodes, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, Lorie, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.